Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 547. 47.
That was nice. I liked it.
Our top 5 hex grid games.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
I am Douglas Stewart.
I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Sierra Holiday.
We would love for you to go over to our website and check out what we have to offer. We have links to our episodes, we have bios, and we have photos of our gaming experiences, some of our favorite experiences that we've had. We also have a link to our Patreon page. We love our patrons, and we are so grateful for the support that you've shown us and allow us to improve the podcast for everyone. If you too would like to become an official member of the Meeple Nation, click that Patreon link, jump over there and become a patron. We thank you so much. Also, we love to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We will look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. And that is going to take us into our weekly highlights portion of the episode.
Is it Highlight 30 again?
It is Highlight 30.
Yay.
I like Highlight 30.
My favorite time of the day.
Awesome. Well, I'll start us off. I have not played this game yet, but I have it set up on my table at home and rules have been read. So I've got a 3-player game set up that I'm going to do a solo playthrough unless I can convince someone to play with me. But that is Inventors of the South Tigris. I just received it. Wow, I feel like Nathan. My Kickstarter in the mail, and I've got everything ready. I just need to play it before I forget how to play it.
Yeah, that's always the trick, right? That's the rub. Because there's many a time I've read a rule book and it never sees the table. And
well, it's at least on the table.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to play, and then my wife told me that we were going to the state fair, so I didn't get my playthrough done. But hey, this week it's going to happen, I think.
You're getting closer.
So I'm excited. It's the third installment of the South Tigris of Shem Phillips games, and it looks awesome. I'm really excited for it.
Good. Doug, what you got?
Well, let me just tell you, I had the opportunity, finally. We've had some scheduling conflicts, but I finally was able to finish up our latest Arkham Horror campaign. This was the Feast of Hemlock Vale. So I went and played this with the Deans, and we wrapped up this campaign. This is the most recent campaign.
For a couple more weeks anyway.
Yeah, until we start the next one. But this was the most recent one that was released. Mm-hmm. And, this one, I think it had a lot of eyes on it. It kind of represents a little bit of a passing of the torch over at FFG. So MJ Newman, who's been long time developer on Arkham Horror and has just done an absolutely phenomenal job. She stepped down. She's kind of passed the baton onto Duke Harst and Nick Corey. I think those are the names, if I'm getting those right. But this was sort of their first stab at an Arkham Horror campaign. So people were wondering if the formula would break, if the quality and pacing of the campaigns would remain the same. And I'm happy to announce that they really smashed this out of the park.
Oh, great.
Yeah, this was a phenomenal campaign for Arkham Horror. Introduced a lot of really great things. It did have kind of an open sandboxy kind of thing, which was not super well executed in the Scarlet Keys campaign, which was the campaign that came out just before this.
I remember you saying that issue.
It just had some it was so open world that I think it was just hard to balance. What happened was they just made all of them rather difficult. And so you kind of stumbled your way through at first until your investigators had leveled up and progressed to the point where they could kind of take on some of those missions. This one tackles the problem in a little bit different way, and it's a little more of a tight storytelling experience. So it's sort of a branching narrative. It sort of is like, you do this thing, you have this mission, now you have a choice to go do like these 3 missions, right? And you kind of pick, and then you go from there, and then you have a choice of doing some others. So it's a little bit more of a tight branching formula. Anyway, it was really, really good. We had a great time playing through it. We all played new investigators, and the quality of work that's gone into the investigators that you actually get to play with has also been really good. All 3 of us enjoyed the investigators that we played. They did some really unique things with the deck building and leveling up. They're starting to lean a lot more into some of the keywords on the cards as opposed to just the card types, which I think is really fun and allows for some fun synergies and things like that. So we had a really, really great time. Finished it up. Can't wait to start the next one. I think we're going to go back to the Forgotten Age for our next one. So we're excited.
So there's a new set that's coming out, isn't there?
There is. Yeah. So they've kind of released a little bit more information about this. So it's the Drowned City campaign. And this is the big one. So this is the one Cthulhu is making his way.
That's right. Yeah.
So we've been progressing through a lot of the elder gods and some of these cosmic entities as you play through these campaigns. And the Drowned City is the one where Cthulhu finally shows up and absolutely wrecks Arkham. So what they have said is that this will not be the end of the Arkham campaigns. So a long time ago, there was kind of a rumor that, hey, we'll be wrapping this game up when Cthulhu finally shows up. And what they've announced is, yeah, it's time for him to finally show up. But what it means is that moving forward after this, the world will be drastically changed. So it's kind of an exciting time, actually, to be an Arkham horror player, just because we are finally getting kind of this big, epic moment that I think a lot of people have been really anticipating, but it also comes with the promise that the game is going to continue past that in sort of a newly forged world after essentially the world knows that the Elder Gods have come, that kind of thing. Now there are things they could do to make it so that, no one who is exposed to this knowledge survives. So that, it could still be like a hidden kind of thing. But I think the promise of what comes after is also really exciting. It's this huge culmination, but then it's also what comes after that has players really excited about it. So can't wait. We've got a lot of fun Arkham horror ahead of us, I think. So
that's awesome. Exciting times. So I'm going to talk about some older games here that I've talked about before, but I had the opportunity to have our neighbors that came by to play some games. I talked about them in the past where they had heard that I had thousands of games. And
were those air quotes you just threw up?
I did throw those air quotes, yes, because heavy on the thousands. No, there's thousand, no S on that, but
not yet.
But they kind of invited themselves. The wife said, I don't want to be rude and invite myself, but can we come over? And so we got the opportunity to play a couple of games with them. My wife was really anxious to get Mlem to the table again, so we played some Mlem, which is the cat astronaut game, and kind of a pressure luck element, which...
Why doesn't it surprise me that your wife was excited for a pressure luck game? Yeah,
no, not at all. That's not her style of game at all. And she lost. Actually, no, she did. She won. She won quite well, too.
She usually can't stop.
No, yeah, she usually presses her luck and blows up the rocket, and she ran away with that game. And then we got the opportunity to teach them... not Planet Hollywood.
Planet Unknown.
Thank you. Planet Unknown.
Two very different things you just named there. Yeah. Planet Hollywood, Planet Unknown, Tomato.
They're related. They're both planets. But got the opportunity to teach this new game to them, which was something that they were unfamiliar with. And they were very excited to play that. Emily, the wife, was concerned that she had to go pick up her daughter. And so she's like, if I have to leave, you guys can just play on without me, whatever. And when it got close to the end of the time, she was very anxious to get the game done so that she could complete the game. Not that she wanted the game to be done, but she wanted to see how it all panned out in the end. I talked to him the next day, and he was all excited he said he stalked me on BGG, looked me up, and found kind of my collection and found some stuff on me and thought that that was pretty cool, and then told me all about creeping me out. Now I know how Greg felt when I cyberstalked him.
Nice.
When he applied to be part of Meeple Nation. But, they were talking about their 100 games and comparing them to I've sold more games than they've owned. But they thought that was kind of fun. And it was neat to find people out in the wild, not from, sometimes we run into people at conventions like Hug. We met up at conventions. It's nice to just kind of find people in the wild that have a shared interest, and hopefully we'll do some more stuff with them and introduce them all. They brought their 14-year-old son with them, and I was a little bit worried that he wasn't picking up on the game, but he was doing great. Some of their experiences, I mean, they talked about playing Twilight Imperium, and his brother, Andy, not to be confused with you, Andy, but Andy had, his brother had a copy of, or just purchased Twilight Imperium 4, gave them his Twilight Imperium 3, and they attempted to play that. And
That's a big game.
it is a big game.
I gather attempted was the key word there.
Attempted was the key word. They tried it for a while. They thought they had it figured out. They started going, realized they didn't have it figured out, tried again, and then they put it away. So
Yeah, that game's hard because you really need to play it with other people who know the rules in order to really learn and come to an understanding or mastery of that game at all.
yeah.
And also, when you play with other players who've already played it, you are going to get your rear end handed to you.
Yep.
Yep.
And you have to
Very
go into
quickly.
it knowing that is going to happen.
And that's going to be your Saturday.
And yes, and that is going to be your Saturday. And don't get your feelers hurt that you will probably get trounced.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyways, they turned out to be pretty fun, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Awesome.
Sierra, what do you got? I'm actually excited about what you got.
Yeah, I want to hear about this because this is one I've been wanting to play.
I had this and sold it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I got this one for free, and we had like a family reunion like the day after I'd gotten it. And I was like, oh, hey, do you guys want to learn this game? I haven't quite read the rules all the way through yet, but I can quickly skim through and figure it out. And
I wish I could say that.
they were pretty short rules. It worked out.
I wish you could say that too.
I wish we could all say that. I think it's just the product of the young mind over there.
Probably.
But yeah, and so I managed to get Amara and her fiance to play this
Oh, wow.
several times.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
Which is
Now,
awesome.
is this a one-time playthrough kind of thing? Is this a campaign? I'm not sure how this is structured.
So this has 3 different ways that you can play it. You can play it as a campaign, you can play it as a team, all co-op, or you can play it in 2 teams going against each other.
Okay.
It takes different players for each. When you're playing the campaign, it's 1 to 2 players. When you're playing the co-op, it's up 3 to 4. And with the teams, I'm pretty sure it's another 3 to 6.
Nice. That's
so-
awesome. Did we say the name of the game? This is Nightfall.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
She's pulling a Nathan.
She's pulling a Nathan and Barry in the lead. So Nightfall. We're talking about
Yes.
Nightfall. Okay. By Red Raven Games. This is by Ryan Lockett.
Well, it's by Alex Davies.
Oh, okay.
With
But
assistance
published through
from Ryan Lockett.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
Alex and Ryan are pretty good friends. Ryan uses Alex as a kind of a bounce off, and Alex, this was, from what I understand, his kind of first run at it. So
Very cool. So
Yeah.
how did you guys like it? How did Amara and Matthew like it?
I think they liked it a lot. I mean, in the first 2 days after having it, I think I played it 6 times.
Oh, wow.
And I think half of those were with them. So it was wonderful to actually get to play games with them because I know Matthew doesn't like playing board games nearly as much as we do. So it was pretty epic. And I've been able to play it in all 3 different ways, which has been really fun. Although the campaign one I did play by myself because I couldn't get Caden to play it with me, which is unfortunate, but it was still really, really fun and I quite enjoyed it.
I do have to fix that. Alex Davies did work on Small Wonder Sky Islands and Deep Vents before this Nightfall.
Oh, he hooked
Oh,
up
okay.
with
And I
defense.
liked Deep Vents. Deep Vents was kind of a cool game.
Nice.
But excellent. That's I worry about Amara and Matthew because Matthew doesn't really like board games and Mara really does. I got sent a picture of, while I was entertaining my neighbors, I got sent a picture from Andy of Pirates of Maracaibo set up at the table. And Amara had a big smile on her face and Matthew was just kind of like, I would rather be anywhere else.
Well, you could tell at the end of that game too, because he started just rushing forward as fast as he could.
Yeah.
And it was like, I want this game to end, so I'm
Well,
gonna end it.
I think he felt like his goal was to beat Amara, and he felt like he was close to beating her, and they actually were pretty close on the score. He didn't make it though.
No, he didn't.
Good.
Good. Yes. And I will say this, as far as Matthew goes, if you play a cooperative game, he tends to
Yeah.
really enjoy cooperative games.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep.
And I think that's because he's fairly competitive and loses all the time because he hasn't really played a lot of board games. So when you are playing with a lot of people who have played a ton,
It's intimidating and
you're probably going to lose.
yeah.
And But with the co-op games, he doesn't get that same feeling. So he actually seems to enjoy himself more with cooperative games.
Nice.
Well, good.
That's awesome. Well, those are some fantastic highlights. Let us proceed into what I think is going to be a really fun conversation about our top 5 hex grid games. And just as a quick note before we get going here, there is a lot of crossover on this list.
Yeah, there is.
So there's going to be a lot of my number, blah, 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 is higher on somebody else's list. So we'll talk about it later.
I'm looking forward to a lot of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, me too.
Me too.
So on that note, Nathan, why don't you get us started with your number 5 pick?
All right. I swear my number 5 was on somebody else's.
Nope.
It was my number 6.
Okay.
So I removed it. I'm not
Okay.
doing number 6, but just so everyone knows, Nathan's number 5 was my number 6.
So there you go. My number 5, I was really excited to get this game and played it several times to begin with. And I bought a ton of expansion content with it for it. And I just haven't opened all that stuff up. And I really regret that. And I really want to get this to the table again.
Yeah.
So what is it? I'm curious now.
This
Nathan.
is, well, maybe I'll talk about some other things first before I mention that all the expansions are really nice. They're the same size box and they all stack nicely underneath it. There's like 8 expansion boxes over there.
You had me at boxes. I'm just on the edge of my seat here.
So this is Memoir 44. Memoir 44 is a World War II scenario-based game where you're playing either the Axis or the Allies. You'll play a game, and then you'll leave the theater set up, switch sides, and start it from the other side, and then get a total of how many points you got from both runs. Because it does, some of the scenarios favor one side over the other. So I like how it has that. We're both going to play both sides, and then see who maximize their points out of both sides. But there's a ton of additional content that is really great to incorporate in this. You start off, you got some cannons and some infantry and some tanks. There's some of them, there's some planes that are introduced, different armies from Axis and Allies sides, and just different theaters that you're fighting in. All sorts of awesomeness that I think is worthwhile. And if you combine 2 copies, then you can play 4v4. Is it 4v4 or 2v2?
2v2, and then you can keep adding to go 3v3 or 4v4.
Yeah, so that would be something that would be kind of cool to try at least once, right?
Yeah, we always talk about it. The problem with this one was we talked about it, and I think we really were going to do it, and then we just kind of moved on from Memoir 44 in general. And this is one I'd really like to get back to,
I agree.
Especially with all the content you have. I really like this game quite a bit. There's a lot there, and I think thematically it's great, and it bears repeating that the genius of this game is how you play both sides of the conflict. A whole game involves playing both sides of the conflict. So even if there's some imbalance, it's, can I play this side of the conflict better than my opponent?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that. I actually wish more games would do that, or structured in such a way that they were shorter and you almost played them in 2 halves.
Yeah.
And I think that's really smart. It's a really, really smart thing that Memoir 44 does. It's great.
Yep. I thought it was really well done. And like you said, I'm looking forward to trying some more of that content. And I would really like to try it with that epic mega game 2000, or I guess 1946.
Awesome. Well, that's a great pick.
That's number 5, Memoir 44.
Awesome.
Excellent. Sierra, what do you got for number 5?
I have Gods of Egypt. I've only played this once, and I played it at SaltCon last year, I think.
Jealous.
And it was super, super fun. I was frustrated afterwards because there was one point in the game that I didn't know, and it was that you could bring your people back when they died. So I was just getting my butt handed to me, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? I can't do anything anymore. Get to the end of the game, and I was asked, why weren't you like bringing people back in? And I was like, you could do that?
That's a great question to ask at the end of the game.
Yeah.
After I kicked your butt, why didn't you do this?
But it was super fun, and it's one that I would definitely like to play again.
I used to have this. I actually was finally able to cull this, and
Doug, you had this too, and you sold also, right?
I still have it. I have everything for this. I have the collectors,
Which is why I
everything
called
all in special edition, super mega, whatever. I don't know. Simon does so many weird things when they're on their Kickstarters, but I backed everything. Now, there was a point where I did actually try to cull this. I just had too many games, and I think the asking price was just a little bit too much, so it never did sell. And so, and I never really, I had people offer a little bit lower, but I kind of wanted it. I don't know. I've always been really curious about this, and I love this Eric Lang trilogy. There was Blood Rage, and then he did the Japanese themed one.
Rising Sun.
Rising Sun, thank you, which I love. I think that's... no, Blood Rage is probably still my favorite of the trilogy, but I really like Rising Sun. And so Ankh has just been sitting, everything's still in shrink, and it's been on my shelf for probably, it's becoming my my number one Shelf of Shame game. Yeah, because it's all still boxed up and in shrink. But
Andy and I have played this. And we really quite liked it.
yeah, and I really want to play it. Just trying to get myself to where I have time to really sit down and learn it and make sure that I have the right experience with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I'm very anxious to play it again with you, especially with all the extra content.
yeah, yeah. So I'm jealous that you got a chance to play it, and I'm really glad that you like it and have good things to say about it, because that makes me all the more motivated to go pull it off the shelf.
3 out of 4 of us agree. You should keep on
Sweet.
And unwrap it.
and
Okay,
unwrap it.
I'll get to it. I'll
Okay.
get to it soon.
Prove it.
That's Andy's phrase lately.
Prove it.
All right, my number 5 is BattleTech. This is near and dear to my heart. I've played BattleTech since the 90s, and since the early 90s, honestly, and I have some very fond memories of playing this game. Now, we started out by playing just the, pulling a mech sheet out of the book and just, I'm going to play the archer, for example, in this time, and this is my mech, and this is what I play with. And it eventually got to the point where more and more books came out, and books where you can create your own mech. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but honestly, half the fun is creating something, and then, or even creating a squadron of mechs, and then you get to take them out on the battlefield and see how well your designs worked. And I love this game. It's so much fun. We do not play this enough. I know our friend Jared would love it if we played more often, because this is one that he is not a board gamer at all by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, there's a stretch there, I think.
Maybe a little bit.
Honorary stretch.
It is very honorary stretch. BattleTech is one where he actually will sit down and play, and Descent. I think those are the only two I can actually get him to play. But yeah, BattleTech is great. It is one that is very tactical. And as far as the hex grid itself, it is where facing matters. So moving along those hex grids, it does matter which way you're facing, because you have your front arc, your side arcs, your rear arc, as far as armor and which weapons you can fire and everything else. So the hex really comes to play very strongly in BattleTech, which I think is great. I've always loved hex grids, but the more we've talked about hex grids and the movement and the way it all works, I think it's far superior than just square grids.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And this is absolutely one that I would play again. The one time we played it was really fun. We definitely need to do this again. I would like to have a mech building session before we do.
For sure.
Because we just grabbed sheets when we played it that one time. And so I'd like to build my own and then jump in again. I think it'd be really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would totally be on board with that too. I've always had a soft spot for mechs. It takes me back to Robotech days.
Oh, yeah, Robotech. Wow, yeah. That's going back. That's another thing we used to do, is play LAN parties and play I don't know if it was Robotech or BattleTech, but we'd have LAN parties where we were playing. We'd all be in our mechs and just, back when you actually had to
have LAN parties.
When you
back
couldn't
in
just
those
play
Halo
online.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those were some good times.
Those were some good times.
The very best. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's a fantastic pick. My number 5 is going to be further up on Nathan's list. In fact, my number 5 is Nathan's number 4. So Nathan, what is your number 4?
So my number 4 is Gloomhaven.
Yeah.
Gloomhaven is a game that we're all very familiar with. Sierra, have you played Gloomhaven?
No, I've played
Frosthaven.
a bit of Frosthaven.
Yeah, so it's in that same vein. So if you're familiar with Frosthaven, you're familiar enough with Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven has, we've experienced play after play after play of this game. I think Doug's probably put in the most logs of this game. But Gloomhaven...
It's close, but I've put in a lot. Yeah.
So Doug, as far as Gloomhaven goes, tell me what you told me on Friday.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, we were talking about this on Friday. I went through a really long burnout period on Gloomhaven because we had played so much of it. And I am just recently starting to lift.
Oh,
yeah, it is definitely starting to now. Don't know that I want to jump back into Gloomhaven. In fact, I think I am completely done with Gloomhaven.
Right.
But I could absolutely jump into Frosthaven or even Jaws of the Lion, which I haven't played yet.
Yeah.
So
Frosthaven is one. I mean, my wife and I played the first scenario, and I really wanted to get her to continue with that. And Zach, Ashley's boyfriend, I talked to them about playing that, and I think he's very interested in that as well. But I don't think Ashley or Cheryl are, and so that's kind of the linchpin, right? Have a hard time getting them to commit to that game, so maybe we need to just bring that right back up here, and the four of us, as soon as we're playing another game that's higher up on the list.
yeah, we've got a few of them that
You
need to
mean
be
two?
played first.
Yeah, two other games that are
Two
higher.
other games that are higher up on the list.
Yes, indeed.
But anyways, Gloomhaven is an excellent. There's so much variety. There was a discussion a while back about somebody who brought up the point of plastic versus cardboard and the need for plastic miniatures, right? That they enhance the game, they enhance the style, but also that plastic miniatures are limiting in a game. So I know Gloomhaven has come out now, and they've gone through several wave releases of releasing plastic versions of these cardboard pieces. But if Gloomhaven had come out originally with the variety of monsters that it has and the variety in the scenarios that it has, if it had tried to include plastic in that game, do you guys think that game would have been as successful?
I would say no.
I kind of agree. I totally agree.
And I'm this is coming from someone who loves miniatures, who loves plastic on the table. I do. I love it. That being said, I think your downtime just to set everything up would take so much longer. Trying to find where the miniatures are and keep track of, I'm hoping they had them numbered somehow so you can keep track of which ones are which. I don't know. I didn't buy the miniature pack for Gloomhaven. That's the nice thing about the standees is they all are numbered. On mine, I have all of mine in pizza boxes, the miniature pizza boxes that have a cool cover on them that I've printed off. And I just know, and then on the back of it, like the bookend part of it, I have it labeled what's in there. So it's super quick to get everything out. You just throw your standees out. It's fast. It's, everybody can help. Whereas if I'm comparing it to some of my other games like Folklore, for example, that has miniatures for everything, you do spend a lot of time going through the different drawers in that creature crate to try to find the monsters that you're looking for. And
or Shadows of Brimstone.
Shadows of Brimstone, same way, right? And it does. It takes a fair bit of time. Now, once you get them on there, does it look epically cool?
For sure.
Absolutely.
Well, especially if they're painted and you've taken time to upgrade them a little bit. But I 100% agree, though. The standees was absolutely the right thing to do with that game.
Yeah, because with the amount of variety and if they had tried to do this, I don't think the Kickstarter would have been nearly successful either. I mean, there has been Kickstarter campaigns for sure that have boxes and boxes and boxes of miniatures and have been very successful, but I don't think it would be as widely successful as Gloomhaven has been. And Gloomhaven was number one on BGG for a long time.
I do agree with you that I think it made it more accessible.
Yeah.
Especially for a big epic game like Gloomhaven is, to have miniatures on that, because it was already an expensive game when it came out. And you think about when Gloomhaven came out, I don't know if there were that many Kickstarters that had the high price tag that we're so used to now with all the miniatures and everything else that comes out. And I think we've all been conditioned to just expect that, if there's miniatures, you're paying a lot more money.
Through the nose, yeah.
Whereas back then, that was not the norm. So
there had still been campaigns like Blood Rage had come out before that, and there was a ton of plastic for Blood Rage.
But I think there were fewer and far between, whereas now it seems to be more the norm than the exception.
Well, and I also look at where Blood Rage is on even the top 100 compared to where Gloomhaven is, right?
Yeah.
And its success, I think, was it was a pricey game, but it still had an easier price point to allow that game to hit more tables, which only increased its popularity, whereas opposed to some of those games where it had such a high price point that it just didn't have the opportunity to get to enough tables, and that longevity just didn't last.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I I love plastic. I love plastic. I love how it looks and how it enhances the game. And I mean, you look at your Cthulhu Death May Die, your Marvel Zombies,
Yep.
Galacticus, that huge table presence. And then you look at the cardboard on Gloomhaven. But, that Gloomhaven is still in the top 10, isn't it? I believe. I haven't looked in a little while.
I think it's still up there, I think it's number 2 or 3, actually.
Well, not only that, I think the Gloomhaven scenarios tend to go a little faster than some of these others, and that's part of it. I think that standees make more sense. But I think I would have disagreed with you probably a year or two ago, Nathan. But I'm on Camp Nathan. Right?
Yeah. Overall, number 3. But yeah, I think a lot of it's success, and not to deny the presence and the joy that plastic brings on the table, but the variety that can come from cardboard does make it a little bit more accessible, right?
Yeah. So excellent choice for number 4. It's a good conversation, but we do have a list to get back to.
All right, shut
so
up, Nathan.
Gloomhaven, you're number 4. My number 5, because it makes excellent use of that hex grid. Love the way we build out the maps, the way all of that works. Terrain, everything. Great game. Good design choices. Sierra, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is Trails of Tucana. This one, I think, with the hex board, it would not work very well with a square board where you're connecting these hexes based off of the terrain on those hexes, based off of randomly drawn cards. And there's only a set number of each type of card. You'd very quickly run out of the forests and plains and the most common ones. And then the rare ones would be super hard to connect all of your things and to get all of your achievements. But super fun game.
Yeah, plus I think it opens up the paths so that you can choose to go, right? Because you're going from a 4, if it was just a square grid, you're going from 4 options to 6 options, which really increases if I'm trying to hit a specific creature that I want to pass through to get my bonuses or whatever, then my options are a lot, I have half as many more options than I had with a square grid. So yeah, this game I don't think it would be near as fun with a square grid versus the hex.
It couldn't. This is all about efficiency and pathing.
For sure.
How you're going to jump over other, things, where you start, where you go. And that puzzle it needs the hex in order to be successful, for sure. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean,
pick.
there's still spots for the square grid for sure.
Sure.
I mean, like we talk about very linear games like Tiny Turbo Cars, Car Wars, anything like that, where you're on a straight track. But the hex is very versatile on any sort of exploration game.
Yeah.
And I think any sort of an exploration game that doesn't use hexes should have rethought their plan.
Silly. It's just silly at this point, right?
Indeed.
I would agree. All right, that leads to my number 4. My number 4 is Terra Mystica. This is a game where everybody's playing an asymmetrical race of creatures, and you are trying to terraform the different lands on the board to match your preferred land type so that you can build. You can't build on anything that does not match your preferred ecosystem. So you're going around the board trying to build up your cities, and once again, the hexes work great on this, just as far as your options, because you do want to build adjacent to, whether you're building adjacent to other players, because there are bonuses and penalties for building next to other players. And you also want to build next to your own stuff, because once you have a city of a certain point value, which is going to be between settlements and your trading posts and your temples and then your citadel, those are all going to be worth different points. Once it hits 7 points, then you're going to be able to create a city and get the bonuses for that. But that would be far, far less efficient and far more difficult if you didn't have the hex grid on the map. Plus, I love this game anyway, just because it has asymmetrical powers.
There it is.
There it is.
It is, yeah.
Asymmetrical starts. I love it. It's so much fun.
That does advance a game so much that, I like that you can have a basic introduction to game where you have, think of Planet Unknown, where everybody has a starting planet, starting corporation, and then you have those asymmetric powers that just enhance that gaming experience.
Well, the replayability factor goes way up.
Yeah.
With that asymmetry.
100%.
Yeah. I'd like to play this again. I think I might be a little more interested in trying Gaia Project, but just because it's, they're very similar. Just one's set in space. And so I think I'd like to try that one. I did really like Terra Mystica though. So yeah, that's a great pick. My number 4, another game that probably made my list because it's just an all around amazing game, but this is Ark Nova. This is one that I still have yet to win you 2 over on, in large part because of the bad experiences you had with the first times that you played it. Not because I think the game failed you at all. I think it was the people at the table who failed you more than the game. And so I really need to get this to the table with you and so you can make a final decision on it. Cause I think if you played it under the right circumstances, you really like it. Ark Nova is a fantastic game. And the board that you have in front of you has a big hex grid on it. This is where you're going to construct and lay out your zoo. And the decisions that you make on that hex grid are incredibly important. You are determining what the size of the enclosures are that you're going to put out there. You've got to make good decisions about what they're next to, about, developing, like there's little like pavilions and kiosks and stuff you can put in there, and you want to try to maximize the space. You've got to take into consideration, mountainous features. You've got to take into consideration the water features that are in the park. There's also bonus icons that you get as you cover certain things up. So strategically determining, the timing on when you want to place certain enclosures down on there to claim bonuses and do some of those things. It's all, I think, a really tight, fun puzzle that is only one part of an incredible game all around. So Ark Nova is really, really super great. And it uses the hex grid really well as far as the zoo construction goes.
I agree. I do need to give it another shot.
I'll get you guys converted eventually, but that'll take us full circle back around to you, Nathan. Tell us about your number 3, except you're not going to tell us about your number 3 because it's definitely higher on somebody else's list.
Yeah, the rest of my stuff till my number 1 is kind of... well, no, my number 2 is number 2 on 3 other people's lists. So, but yeah, and my number 3, we'll get back to you.
All right. So that'll take us to Sierra. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Applejack. This is such a fun game, and I am so very glad that we were able to get this one. Such a good find. You're placing these hex tiles that have apples on them to create this orchard to try and get the max amount of honey or points at the end of the game. And it's really, really cool having this management, but also kind of luck of the draw, trying to figure out how to place things well and spend your honey and make honey back so that you're not going bankrupt and wasting tile space.
I do like that it is luck of the draw, but there is variety in that luck, right? You're not limited to just drawing one thing, but you are limited in your options that are on the board.
It's making the most of the options that you have. So it is luck of the draw in that the luck determines the options that you have, but you have variety to pick from.
Yeah.
And if
sometimes.
If you don't like it, you can still blind draw. There is a variant that allows you to have a tile set on your board, and you can save that and use that instead of one of the ones that you have an option to take.
Oh, really?
I like that actually.
Which is awesome. We play with that all the time now. And I think this is actually my favorite Uwe Rosenberg game. I love the plan. There's a lot of planning, a lot of forethought that has to go where you're placing tiles. If you play on the side where you have starting apples that are printed on your board, that kind of enhances that planning aspect of it. Because there are, you're trying to essentially, at least when I play, I'm trying to get to where I can at least have 4 of each kind of apple so that I can score all of them by the end of the game and get the huge bonus for at least scoring everything. But I've seen, like Amara did a blossom and just honey generation strategy, and she in that particular game she destroyed everybody. So there's variable ways to win and score a lot of points, which I also like.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a fun game, and it's quick. It's a great game.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the planning that you're talking about is facilitated because of the hex grid pattern.
For sure.
You're playing those apples out, but what you're really trying to do is set yourself up so that when you play one of those hexes down, you can line up all of the sides on it in a way that will score you the most or generate the most of a certain type of, well, it's really that it'll generate the most honey for you
right
when you place it. But then also you're trying to create the groups of apples and do all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
that hex grid is what's facilitating, I think, a lot of the planning and fun and strategy of that game.
So I have to jump in because this is a highlight on Nathan's life. I whooped my wife's butt in this game. by like
Nice.
almost 50 points.
Holy cow! Does she still want to play it?
Yeah, she does.
Okay,
She usually wins. So it's always nice when I get a chance to win at Uwe Rosenberg.
This would be
game.
like if Nathan won a game of patchwork.
It
against Cheryl.
would be.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, gotcha.
But not only did I win, but I decisively won. I mean, it was 44 points that I said, my orchard's better than your orchard.
Nice.
But no, that's a great pick, Sierra. So thank you for giving me the chance to
brag.
Yeah, express my joyous exuberance of defeating my wife.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Very
It's the
nice.
small things.
Celebrate those small victories. All right, so that leads to my number 3, which is a game that I have spent many, many, many hours playing over many, many different plays. I got Runebound 2nd Edition when it first came out, and this is back when my brothers were still single, and I actually saw them. And we'd get together almost every Sunday, and this one hit the table more often on more Sundays than it didn't. But both of them really, really enjoyed this game. You're playing on a map that has a hex grid, and you are trying to reach the different cities, and then there are gem locations that have different gems, 4 different colored gemstones on them, and then at those locations are going to be encounters or monsters to fight. You're going to fight the monsters or resolve the encounters, and you're trying to level up your hero in order to take out the big bad Markarth, I think is the name of the dragon, or defeat either 3 or 4. It's been a while since I played the game, but either 3 or 4. I think it's 3 different of the red dragon cards that count as dragon runes. This game is amazing. It is so much fun. But as far as the hexagonal grid goes, you roll when you want to move, you're going to roll a bunch of 6-sided dice, and each of those dice are going to have terrain symbols on them, which will match the different terrain types that are on the board. And sometimes that can prove to be fairly difficult to get around the board because you need to have the dice to match the specific types. So how you move and where you end up can really determine exactly whether your plan can come to fruition. And the more difficult, the super easy encounters tend to be close to the road. There are more roads on the dice, so it's easier to go along the roads. But you want to get to those tougher and more lucrative encounters and monsters, you have to go off trail and through swamps or through mountains and forests, which are a little more difficult to roll. So setting yourself up from round to round to where maybe I'm only one space away, well, I can just move one space instead of rolling dice and just move to where I want to go. So there's some planning involved also with the movement in Runebound. And it's a adventure game. It has some like a role-playing character development aspects to it where you're leveling up your hero. You can gain allies and make yourself even more formidable in those monster fights. And then go into the cities and gain loot cards and sell cards and heal and everything else. So it's a great game. It's a fun game. But as far as the hexagonal grid and the movement, it can be rewarding to plan it out and get it to work. It can also be equally very frustrating to not be able to get to where you want to go. Especially if the dice don't come up in your favor because they're D6s and they hate me.
Yeah, that sounds like that would be really frustrating. This is one I've only played one time, and it was shortly after I had joined Meeple Nation. So this has been 4 years ago now. And yeah, I remember liking it. It was good.
That was the last time we've played it, I think.
Yeah, it's been a really long time. But good pick, especially with the hex grid consideration there. That's awesome. My number 3 pick is Scythe, and this is a game that I just love, and it is a game that is played out on a hex grid, and
I've never played this,
and it's amazing.
You haven't played this one?
No.
You really
just
haven't
don't
played
sit-
Scythe?
Just don't
not.
sit next to Richie. It's a great game if you don't sit
Yeah,
next to
Yeah,
Richie.
just don't play next to Richie.
You guys played it that one time, and I was just looking at the table and decided to try a different game on the other table.
Well, you missed out. You should have
Did I?
swapped Richie.
I should have swapped Richie.
And we both could have had fun.
Wow. Okay.
Scythe is genuinely an incredible game. This is basically it's an action selection game where you are moving out across a hex grid that represents sort of a 1920s Europa. And there's definitely aspects of area control. There is some conflict, but that is not the heart of the game at all. In fact, you can only get, I believe it's 2 stars toward, ending the game through conflict. The others you need to get through other means. So this is not a combat driven game, and it's not really even an area control game. There are definitely aspects of area control, but it's really more about how you use your resources and the area that you get to wisely, and maximizing the efficiency in which you move certain units around the map. When you combine the components of this game with the art and aesthetic of the game, the really slick play of the game, because it's a big board, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of pieces, but at its heart, it's a very easy game to play. It's, shouldn't take very long. Yes, when you get some players, there's a little bit of AP. However, for the most part, turns fly around the table really quickly.
Yeah, that's one I want to try for sure. It looks great, and it's so highly rated that, why we need to get it to the table.
Yeah, I think you would really like this.
Yeah, Scythe is awesome.
Yeah, there's so much going on, so many little benefits, the asymmetric powers, the paths to victory. Scythe is a good game.
Yep.
Just don't sit next to Richie.
And that is my number 3, which is going to take us to number 2. And this is a 3-way crossover.
Yeah, this is where I play catch up.
Yeah.
I went on a little bit about Gloomhaven and plastic versus cardboard. I'm going to sum it all up and take 3 people's number 2.
So number 2 is a 3-way crossover between Nathan, Sierra, and Andy. I have a different number 2. In fact, this game didn't make my list, but the 3 of you really like this. What are we talking about?
We are talking about the Castles of Burgundy. This is a game that I love to lose.
Yeah.
It's rare that there's a game that I can play 10, 15, 20 times and lose every single one of those times and still want to play again. And Castles of Burgundy is that game. I mean, you have a hex grid that everybody has a different map. The maps are all the same size, but how they're laid out is all different for each person.
Very, very nice.
Nice.
And so your castles can go in certain spots, your cities can go in certain spots, your markets, your mines, all these are laid out differently, and how you take advantage of the open market that's available for everybody and try to monopolize that on your board to give you the most points is something I'm still lacking, but very much something that I enjoy. There's so many different buildings that are out there, and if you have the super ultra cool acrylic version that Andy has, then it's even more cool. Or you can have the basic version that Sierra has and still have a ton of fun with that. So
yeah. Now I will say this game is starting to wear thin for me.
No,
on BGA. Because I know Andy.
I'm so sorry.
Because I know Andy has this incredible version of it, and I want to play that.
Yeah, you just get tired of whooping me. That's what I think.
Well,
I never get tired of whipping you in this game.
Jody beats both of us.
Yeah.
So it's not like either one of us is pulling the W in that game.
No.
Yeah, this is one that has been on, high on my list for basically since I bought the game, which
The original game.
And boy, the facelift they gave this game was huge, because it was, you look at the humdrum old box that Sierra inherited from me, and you're like, if you're judging a game by its cover, you're like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. It's
100%.
definitely a game I would pass by, especially in today's standards. I would totally pass by.
Yeah. And what a hidden gem it was. I don't even know why I picked it up, because I'm usually drawn by the art. It was probably because I actually picked it up and looked at it and I'm like, oh, this looks amazing. And it is amazing. But there's a lot of levers to pull in this game, I think, which is one of the reasons why I like it. There's a lot of ways to score points, a ton of things to do. And at least for me, when I'm planning out my turns, I feel like it's imperative to try to look and see what other players are planning, because your plans get foiled quite often, especially on buildings that get taken, or I know in the past I've tried to be starting player just so I have those options first, but that seems to be, especially if Amara's playing, that seems to be a near impossibility to try to be starting player. So you have to try to take a different route, which is how I've had to play my most recent plays of this, because I have a daughter who's obsessed with being starting player.
Yeah, it is kind of a funny thing, but she is very much first player driven.
That's awesome. This is a good pick, though. And I really do like it. There's a reason why this has become a classic and a reason why it got that deluxeified reprint edition, why they were able to justify doing that, because the gameplay was so solid that a deluxe version of it would, they knew that a deluxe version would sell so well, and it did. And they're now doing the same thing with Puerto Rico, and I'm very excited about that.
Me too.
It's very, very cool. All right. My number 2 is going to be somebody else's number 1. So we'll skip it for now. That's going to bring us back to you, Nathan.
Back to me already.
Yep.
All right. Well, my number 1 is...
now, this one's also my number 1. So this is a crossover between the two of us.
Yes. And it should have been... I'm kind of surprised this wasn't very high on your list, Andy.
Yeah, me too.
But anyways, this game is Stars of Icarios. I very much enjoy Stars of Icarios. I think the whole space campaign with the mixed in of away missions and the story that is there, the mistakes that we've made in that story.
Yeah.
And just the whole experience has been phenomenal in this game. Sierra, we just brought you in for your first game, so I'm interested to see how you feel about it. But I very, very much love this game. The hex is where you move on all the space missions, which allows you to
when you're playing on that map, that hex grid map, you live and die by the grid.
Yeah.
Because it determines everything. Right? The orientation of your ship, exactly which way you're facing. And you actually have to expend a dice, right, to even move it sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Or trigger certain abilities just to get your ship to face certain ways. It determines the pattern that you're going to move, that the enemies are going to move. It determines your weapon, like blasting, like arcs, everything. Like you really do just live and die by that hex grid when you're playing, and it works incredibly well.
Yeah,
and that's why this was my number 1 pick over what my number 2 pick was, which we'll talk about in a minute. But that's why, because when it comes to the hex grid on this, you really do have to just lean completely into what that hex grid does for you in terms of play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not only just how limiting it is. I mean, you think that, okay, yeah, the hex grid opens things up a lot, but honestly, with Stars of Icarios, because of the way you move, the engines you have are a very specific movement that you get to do as far as maneuvers. And because it has so many options, it makes it, which I think is a good thing, it makes it more difficult to, and you really have to think about it and plan it out on how to get positioned correctly so that you can optimize your weapons. I think if you had just a square grid, it would be far easier to do that. Where there are so many more options and where everything is spread out in a different way, I honestly think it makes it more difficult because there are more options. I think that makes it more tactical due to specifically the hex grid. And I honestly really like that because there is a little bit of brain burn every round. Okay, this is what I want to do. How in the world am I going to get my ship to where it needs to go in order to pull it off? So I think it's a great pick for your number 1 especially as far as the hex grid, not just the firing and the ship facing, but I think even with the movement, even more so.
I mean, not only that, but like it determines like your advantage or disadvantage, and so you have to be planning what you're going to do and then also try to figure, okay, this is what's going to happen with the enemy and how that's going to affect you as well.
And that's the wild card, right? Because the enemy is, we draw a card and we just follow what's on the card as far as the AI goes. And yeah, you can get yourself positioned in a way where you think I'm good, and it totally wasn't what you planned, what they end up doing, right? So
no, the enemies will move right around you and come into flanking position and just do all kinds of damage. Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Great pick.
Awesome. So let's see, that'll take us to Sierra, your number 1.
This one is Comet. I know I've talked about this one a lot, but I love this game so much. And I think with the hex grid in this one, it makes it really fun with the synergies that you can create with other players, because that would be different if it were in a square grid as well, right? Because you're placing extra pieces on the board occasionally or jumping over all these other players and also trying to line yourself up so that you aren't being the one who is being jumped over and helping other players, which I think is really fun to plan out.
Yeah, it's almost like trying to plan out checkers on a hex grid instead of a square grid, you know? But you can jump over any number of them, right? As long as they're adjacent to each other. So once again, And this seems to be a common theme, at least for me with hex grids, is there's a lot of planning involved in where your pieces are going and trying to decipher exactly where your opponents are going to be so you can take advantage of their placement and jump over them and skip some of those terrain pieces and really jump far ahead, especially if you're playing some of those dinosaurs that start way in the back and they either have really cool abilities or they're worth a ton of points. If the faster you can get them up there and take advantage of jumping over, whether it's your own pieces or other players' pieces, the faster you can get them through and rescued and get more dinosaurs out there to rescue. So, and the game ends way too quickly in my opinion. But yeah, great pick.
Yeah, I know when I've played and I've had some of those higher dinosaurs or the ones that need one of the higher eggs, I'll purposefully put one of my lower dinosaurs onto a higher number so that I can use that to bounce off each other.
Yeah.
That's good thinking.
Yep.
That's a great game. I'm glad you guys discovered that at BGG.
Yeah, I enjoy Comet quite a bit. That's one I would definitely like to play some more of. All right, Addy, and that is going to take us to your number one, which was Nathan's number 3 and my number 2.
And it is such a wonderful game. So much so that I have been really contemplating buying it because we don't ever get to play it. So it can sit on my shelf unplayed.
I was going to say, how's that going to help?
And that is Oathsworn, Into the Deep Wood. I love this game so much. Now, I agree with you, Doug. Once you had stated that this is why this wasn't your number one, is because Stars of Ikarios uses the hex grid it's a little more strong, and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But
I would say you still live and die by the hex grid in Oathsworn.
You do.
There's just not quite as much that's determined. For example, when you move your character, you are spending your resources, your animus, to move, and you can just kind of move. You just do it, and
your
then
facing doesn't matter.
Yeah, and then you once you're in the hex, you determine which way you want to be facing, because the way that you're oriented does matter. You have to be oriented the right way. You're definitely going to be looking at the patterns and everything based on what you're doing. However, you get to choose, as opposed to in a game like Stars of Ikarios, where it is very specific.
Yes, you end up where you end up, whether you like it or not. So yes, I agree with you. And I guess the reason why this ended up being my number one is because of it uses the hex grid well, but maybe it's just because I want to play it so badly. I don't know. But
I get that.
It is my number one. And it's
definitely get that. Yeah.
The story in this is so good, and the narration is just phenomenal. I think that narration is probably something that just
it's next level.
Draws me in.
Yeah, it's next level for sure.
The whole battle plan,
the battle flow system.
Battle flow. Thank you. I really enjoy how that works, and I find it very challenging, but I think it's a very good challenge that is a great element in the game. And just the plastic that's on that is phenomenal.
Yeah, the minis are incredible.
Yeah. You don't think you can call them minis.
They're not.
Yeah. And the fact that you can hot swap your pieces, so like if you upgrade your weapon, you can pull out your arm and put on your new arm with a new weapon.
Did you just say hot swap?
Yeah,
wow.
It's totally hot swappable.
Wow, I like it.
No, it is cool though. That armory system is very cool. If you upgrade from a mace to a sword, pull off the arm and replace the mace arm with the sword arm. It is really, really cool. There's a lot to love about Oathsworn, from the app and the story and the narration to the minis and how they work. And then, of course, just those boss battles are so fun.
They're so good.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that each boss battle has felt different. It's not just you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. I like how they're all unique. They play differently, and the scenarios are different. The enemies that you have a boss, but he's going to have minions that come out that play differently. Yeah, it's great.
Fantastic. Well, those are some great picks. Our top 5 hex grid games. Let us know what your favorite hex grid games are, or how you feel about hex grids in general, by dropping us a line at meeplenation@gmail.com. Until next time,
we'll see you on the grid, the hex grid, at the game table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.